Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to scroll a hammer. Well, this is a fun little project and a great gift for somebody who has a shop, and it all starts off with a cheap hammer. Now, this is not the highest quality hammer in the world, and you wouldn't want to use the highest quality because we're going to cut it up on the scroll saw. The first thing that we want to do, though, is we want to get these labels taken off cleanly. Well, I've never quite understood why manufacturers think it's a good idea to put these silly tags on and make them practically impossible to get off, and when you do get some of them off, you end up with residue like this on the back of it. It's just a terrible thing. But I found that a heat gun will take it off just perfectly. So heat it up just a little bit, just to soften the adhesive. And then once you get it softened, you should be able to peel it right off. There you go. And a little bit of mineral spirits now on a rag will take off the rest of that sticky residue. There you go. Clean as a whistle. Well, the next thing I've done is I've gone on the computer onto a word processing program, and I have printed out whatever words I want to be on the handle. In this case, it's Pop's Workshop. So I've done different sizes, so I'm going to cut these out and lay them on the hammer handle and see which one will suit the best. And we'll just lay it on there and see what we think. And yes, I'm thinking that's probably the right size for this hammer. So our next step is to apply some spray adhesive to the back of this piece. We're going to let it tack up for 3 minutes, and once that is done, we're going to line it up where we want it and lay it down on our handle and stick it in place. All right, so we're going to rub that down so that it's not going anywhere. And now that we have that done, well, what do? Well, we need to cut it out, but it's pretty hard to cut it out on a hammer. So for that, we need to make a little jig. So all I've done to make this jig is I've used some 3/4 inch ply. I've cut it to 1.5 inches wide. Once I got it to that width, I then set the blade to 45 degrees and I cut a V-notch right in the middle of it here. I don't know how well it's showing, but there it is. And then I cut each piece to 12.5 inches long. So how did I come up on that 12.5 inches? Well, from the top of your hammerhead right here, you want to measure back, and then you want to leave yourself about 1.5 inches off of the back end of this for securing the hammer. At this point in time now, what I need to do is at this end here, at the head of the hammer end, I need to drill a 1/4 inch diameter hole right here and here on both pieces, and that will house 1/4 bolts that will go through there. We're also going to need the same thing on the opposite side. So for the head of the hammer, I think I'm going to come in about 1/2 inch from the end. Just like that. And you know what? I think I'm going to do the other side. Let me just see where it ends up on the hammer here. You may want to check it on yours. Every hammer is different. Yeah, I'm going to think right around here. I don't know what measurement that is. Let's go at the 3/4 inch mark. So 3/4 inches on the one side and 1/2 inch on the other. And we'll center these at 3/16 of an inch from the edge on each one of these holes. And we'll just mark this one. All right, so we're going to drill these out now, and then we can get into adding the hardware for our jig. So once you get those holes drilled, you can install some 1/4 bolts. The ones here at the back are a little short. I'm hoping I can make them work. If not, I'll cut some threaded rod to go in there. But you just want to get a couple wing nuts and thread them onto your bolts with your hammer in place. You can see it there right between our V-notch. And by doing that now, let me just get this other one in. By doing that, it fully supports our hammer in this jig and won't allow it to shift as we're scrolling it. This hammer is not a flat surface, which means it's going to be wobbling and very hard to control while on the saw. So by putting it in a jig like this, we have now given ourselves a nice solid surface to be able to scroll saw with, and it holds our hammer securely. So what's left to do now? Well, now we have to think about how we're going to cut this. Well, truth be told, because I had to use whatever bolts I had on hand, the heads of the bolts are a little big and they extend beyond the bottom of our jig. So all I've done is cut some 1/8 inch hardboard to the same dimensions, and I'm going to use some double-sided tape to stick it to the bottom, and that will raise it up just enough to make it so that our jig is now perfectly usable. And that is essentially all there is to building the jig in order to cut this hammer. You can pretty much cut anything on a scroll saw, even oddly shaped things, as long as you can find a way to keep it flat to the table so it's not twisting and jamming your blade. And this little jig works perfectly to hold the odd shape of a handle. So now it's time to cut out our words, but there's something you've got to pay attention to depending on your type of script, or your type of font rather. Here I've done a script style, and you can see that if I cut out the black on the P, let's just use the P for an example, if I cut out all of that black, this section right here is going to fall out of our handle because there's nothing left to hold it. So you actually want to cut it a little short right there. Just round it off so that it leaves that one little piece to hold that center section. Same with here. You want to pay attention to what you're doing so that all the pieces will still hold together. Once you figure out exactly how to hold these pieces in, all you need to do is drill a couple blade entry holes, and we're going to start cutting this. Just to show how tough of a drill it is, that last bit snapped off. Not a problem. I've got a beefier drill bit there now, and we'll carry on drilling these blade entry holes. And now we'll head over to the scroll saw. Well, I have a brand new number 7 reverse tooth blade installed in the saw, and we're just going to take it nice and slow and cut out the letter P. All right, so I wanted to keep that clip in real time to show you how long it takes just to cut one letter. Now, I'm not going to do the rest of the cutting in real time. In fact, I'll probably do a time lapse here just to finish this off, and I'll come back and see you when I'm finished. Well, I didn't time how long it took me to cut that, only because I wasn't too concerned about the time factor. So let's take this out of our jig that holds it in place, and we'll just brush this off. And what we want to do at this point now is remove our pattern. So we're going to use a heat gun and heat the glue up on this. We're going to remove our pattern and then clean it up with some mineral spirits to get the glue residue off of the handle. Well, I've cleaned it up, taken the glue residue off, and I've noticed that I've got a little bit of paper towel residue here between some of the letters. So I'm just going to use a pick to pull that out. You can use a toothpick, you can use a pair of tweezers, whatever you like, but we're going to get this, there you go, those little pieces out of there that accidentally ripped off the paper towel. But something else I noticed, which was kind of interesting and rather funny, that tough spot there, look at that. I just pulled it out. Can you see what that is? That, my friends, is the piece of drill bit that broke off, and it's still inside of our piece. It's out now, but it just goes to show you this is some tough wood. It broke the bit off, and then I was able to saw around it. I actually went through 3 saw blades doing this, and I just want to pan away here and show you the pictures of the blades that I went through. And one of them, which is the one that ended up cutting into that drill bit, is actually got no teeth left on it, hardly at all. These blades, I'm going to throw them all out, as they've served their usefulness now. They are done, and as I've said many times on the show, blades are cheap. Well, I think the last thing that I want to do for my project anyway is use some of that Autosol polish that you guys know I love so much, and we're gonna polish the head of this hammer to make it look just that much prettier here. And just like that, with a little bit of elbow grease and some effort, look at that. That's sexy. Well, now there's nothing left to do but hang it up. And there you have it. Scroll sawing a hammer handle. Guys, this is a really awesome little project, and if you have someone, whether it be a relative or a friend or whatever, that has a shop, this might be quite possibly one of the most thoughtful gifts you could ever give them. A handmade piece that says, hey, this is Pop's shop. And on top of that, just a load of fun to do. What are the keys to a successful project here? Well, there's several. One is change those blades. The damage that's done on these blades during cutting something as strong or as hard as a hammer handle is phenomenal. It just destroys them. But that's the nature of using a blade. Eventually it wears out, just as drill bits get dull and table saw blades get dull. You can sharpen table saw blades, you can sharpen drill bits, but you cannot sharpen a scroll saw blade. So it's not worth ruining your project for the sake of a blade which costs mere pennies. On top of that, I would say another, it's not necessary, but it's something that can help, is seeing exactly what you're doing. And for that, I use my magnifier, my illuminated magnifier. It allows you to see everything crystal clear. You can see exactly where your blade is. You know exactly where you're cutting. There's no problems whatsoever. On top of that, don't get frustrated, guys. Do not get frustrated. I had the problem of the bit snapping off in that W. It's no big deal. I just worked around it and was able to cut that bit out of there and eventually pull it out with tweezers, but didn't ruin my project. I just had to make a couple little modifications to fix it up, and for that I just made like the lines of the W just a little bit bigger so that I can cut around that drill bit and get it out of there. One other thing too is the dust blower on your scroll saw. Don't have it pointing to the side. If you're doing a project like this, point it straight down at where you're working. The reason for that is the jig. As you're rotating the hammer around working on your project, the jig gets in the way of the blower and the dust can restrict your view of the lines that you're cutting, therefore giving you problems and possibly ruining your project. The most important one here, and again, I can't stress this one enough, you're not in a hurry. Take it slow. If I was to guess, I'm looking at the time now, how long it took me to cut this hammer, I'd say it was easily an hour. Easily an hour. But it was one heck of an enjoyable hour, and I loved it. The other thing I want to point out, guys, about going slow is the harder the wood you cut on a scroll saw and the thicker it is, your blade has a tendency to deflect. And what I mean by deflect is that it bows. It will bow out. It will give you a curved wall cut. And by doing that on such a smaller piece with such intricate things as scrolled lettering, what's going to happen is it's going to blow out at the back. It's going to cut at all the pieces. It will not look good. If you can see by taking your time, the front looks exactly like the back, except in reverse. And it should. And that's how you can tell whether or not you're cutting too fast. If this suddenly starts to distort and not look like this side, you're putting too much pressure on that blade and you're not letting the saw do its job. Simple as that. Guys, what a great little project and a lot of fun. I want to thank you for tuning in with me this week. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you don't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. This is a great project. I've had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope you're going to try it for yourself. And more importantly, guys, I hope you're going to join me next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.